What was truly amazing was watching him arrive, because usually he would go to these townships that were way out of the way, because that's how apartheid worked. They would just put people in the middle of a desert, in the middle of a field or whatever. Most people didn't have television, and for a long time his face was banned. So maybe they'd seen him on a poster. Maybe they'd clustered around and seen, on the day of his release or something. But this was this enormous figure that most of these people, or many of these people, had not seen. You would see the dust from his car sort of get closer and closer. And at some stage, his bodyguards would take him out and put him on hoist him up onto the back of the van. But from the moment that you saw the dust and the people knew it was him, this huge excitement would just kind of, electricity would kind of emerge through the crowd. And the excitement would not stop, and it would be these fantastic, ANC resistance songs, we're on our way to freedom, we're on our way to victory, and ululations, these kind of really, shrill sounds. And you would be bowled over by that energy. And a couple of times I would travel with his bodyguards, they would let me travel with them, and that you would see people 10 miles, 20 miles, 40 minutes, 50 minutes up the road, punching the air and singing his name. My task was to follow Mandela around. Obviously that seemed to most people like a dream job, and in many ways it was a dream job. What was quite interesting actually was that he was quite boring. As a public speaker, no black people had voted before, apart from in their unions or within the ANC or whatever, but they hadn't voted in a public civic election. And his job was, on the campaign trail, was first of all to galvanise people, but secondly to educate them. So there would be this long shtick where he would say at every meeting, when you open the paper, you will see the 3 letters, ANC, say it after me. And then the crowd would go, ANC. And you will see the spear and the assegai, which is the symbol of the ANC. And then he'd show them the spear and the assegai. And there you will see the face of an old man who has been made very grey by all the worries that you have given him, and that was him. And there you must put your cross, very... And I remember a guy turning to me and saying, it's not Martin Luther King.
Africa!
What happened to him under apartheid was actually the rule rather than the exception for Africa, right up to the Second World War, and then for quite some time afterwards. It's only in the 50s and 60s that the idea of democracy comes to Africa. He becomes the face of a resistance movement. Not as a dictator, but as an emblem, as a symbol. And he achieves iconic status in the West, particularly among the young and among the left.
The Africans want the franchise on the basis of one man, one vote. They want political independence.
Do you see Africans being able to develop in this country without the European being pushed out?
We have made it very clear in our policy that South Africa is a country of many races. There is room for all the various races in this country.
When he stands before the court in the early 60s, I think, and is sentenced, he's not a communist, he's not a Marxist, he's not even an Africanist as such. That makes him a fairly unique figure. So then, throughout the negotiations with his release, he is able to negotiating to some degree set terms for the kind of country he wants to lead. There's no question about who's going to lead this country if there's elections.
The government is unqualified in its commitment to the elimination of racial discrimination from every law and act of government.
He emerges at a different, in a different context to the context that every other African leader emerges in. He emerges actually in a unipolar world without a huge Soviet Union to either depend on or at least to play off.
We are going forward. The march towards freedom and justice is irreversible.
In other hands, that iconic status that he has earned, the huge personal following that he has, could be employed for dictatorial or self-enriching purposes. He just has, as it turns out, and from spending a lot of time in his proximity, he just doesn't have much interest in that.
I would like to put each and every one of you in my pocket and to return with you to South Africa.
There was this fear that kind of, well, it's only working because Mandela's here, and Mandela is this kind of, super person.
Well, I hope you'll intimidate the Australians that they are intimidating me by your height.
He managed the transition from tyranny to democracy. If people don't like what he did, then they can vote his party out. There haven't been internecine tribal warfare. There hasn't been internecine racial warfare. These are great, great achievements given the legacy of apartheid. It should also be recognised, I think, that his legacy is not uncomplicated. He did leave a country that was always going to have inequalities. He wasn't going to solve that in 5 years. They probably had more inequalities than it needed to have. Had the ANC, with him as its leadership, negotiated economically for a better deal.
We will be able to say, here lies a man or woman who has done his or her duty.
In politics, all too often, black people can kind of, in a way, only be understood as redemptive figures. And so for many people, he had that space of just being saint-like, when in fact what he was an incredibly canny, brilliant politician. Also an incredibly moral figure, obviously, but that desire to remove him from politics and actually remove him from humanity and hold him up as a hallowed figure, actually I think does him a disservice.
The march towards freedom and justice is irreversible. I have fought very firmly against white domination. I have fought very firmly against black domination. I cherish the ideal of a new South Africa where all South Africans are equal.